Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are. Tonight, I'd like to deal with the issue of the ANC Party Congress resolution last December. The party resolved that they would not allow regime change in Zimbabwe. This is a serious matter, a matter that we in Zimbabwe should not ignore and should take very seriously, particularly since we are going into an election in a few months' time. The right to decide who rules Zimbabwe should be the preserve of the people of Zimbabwe. One cannot overemphasize that. That is what democracy is all about. You want free, fair, and credible elections to hold those holding public office to account. And the ultimate decision of the people can be to remove them, those who are in office, out of office. That is the ultimate decision. And that decision should be made by the people of Zimbabwe and the people of Zimbabwe alone in a free, fair, and credible election. So if the people of Zimbabwe were to vote to remove Zanu PF, for instance, what business is it of ANC to say they're not going to allow regime change in Zimbabwe? The ANC, whether we like it or not, has the opportunity to actually interfere in that profound way. ANC is the government in South Africa, and South Africa is the dominant country in the SADC region. And Zanu PF has relied on SADC endorsement of rigged elections to stay in power. The one occasion SADC stood up to Zanu PF was in 2008, after the blatant cheating by Zanu PF and followed by the want of violence. SADC, as well as the African Union, could not endorse Mugabe and Zanu PF election victory that year. And so SADC forced Zanu PF to agree to the need to implement democratic reforms. For those not aware of it, not even one meaningful democratic reform was implemented. And the reason for it is that Robert Mugabe of Zanu PF bribed Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends to do nothing about the reforms. And so no meaningful reform was implemented, and the rest is history. SADC, to be fair to them, they did push MDC to implement the reforms throughout the 5 years. And even as a last-minute attempt, they held a meeting in June 2018 in which they told Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends that if you go into the elections, you will lose because Zanu PF will rig. And they were pushing for the elections to be postponed to allow for reforms to be implemented. But of course, their advice, Morgan Tsvangirai did not accept their advice, and so went on to participate in the elections, and Zanu PF rigged them. And I think at that point, SADC reverted to their uh, default setting of endorsing Zanu PF rigged elections. And they've been doing that ever since. So 2023, there is a good chance that ANC would endorse another rigged elections by Zanu PF, and we know Zanu PF is rigging these elections, and thus gives Zanu PF legitimacy, and thus fulfill at least ANC's own party resolution of last year that they will not allow regime change in Zimbabwe. And the rest of the SADC countries will endorse whatever the ANC says. So the threat is real, by ANC is real. The question then is, why is South Africa, the ANC government, interfering in Zimbabwe? I postulated at the time when that resolution was made known that ANC is trying to cover its own base. The ANC government, since the exit of the late iconic leader Nelson Mandela, has failed to deliver on a number of fronts. And right now, they're feeling the pressure. ANC is desperate to hang on to power. And I believe, and I said it at the time, that ANC sees Zimbabwe as the template from which it can copy. If it can keep Zanu PF in power in total disregard of the democratic will of the people of Zimbabwe, maybe it could transpose the same position in South Africa. And there's no doubt that ANC government has failed to deliver in South Africa. And there is a video that has been taking the rounds of Malema threatening a mass protest in South Africa in March, in 2 months' time, to protest ANC government's failures. Let's just listen to this.
On the 20th of March 2023, there will be a shutdown, and it is our right. We're talking about our rights. Don't ask us about other people's rights. Let them talk about their own rights. We're talking about ours now. We're responsible for our rights, and no one can stop us from exercising our rights. When asked them how they are going to exercise their rights under the circumstances, we are exercising our rights. There will be no school, there will be no university, there will be no factory, there will be no bus, no taxi, unless they're taking protesters to the picket lines. There will be no truck to Richards Bay. There will be no train to Richards Bay. There will be no big roads that will be operating on the 20th of March unless it's emergency services. And we are not threatened by any security because we do this peacefully. It's our right. And if they want to come and violate our rights, they will find us ready. No one is going to intimidate us. South Africa will come to a standstill If Ramaphosa does not resign on the 20th of March, then what will happen will be announced on the 20th of March. But we never make pronouncement on the things that are not possible. Whether Ramaphosa likes it or not, he's a mess in this country. He's responsible for the crimes of Palapala. And it's not me who's saying that. It's the former Chief Justice who says there is a prima facie evidence for Ramaphosa to answer on Palapala. Why would you want to continue as a president after being found with dollars that are not declared to Reserve Bank and SARS? Why would you want? I asked Ramaphosa, I'm not speaking to you here because Ramaphosa is not here. When he called a meeting of political parties, everybody said this state has failed. And I said to him, everybody, including the ANC in this meeting, said the ESCOM has failed, the state has failed. They mean you because you are the presider of this failure. Why do you want to continue as a president? Everywhere else, if this EFF starts declining and is dying, under my leadership, I have to resign and allow someone else with capacity to take over this organization.
There we have it. I think there's no denying that South Africa government has not performed ever since the exit of the iconic leader Nelson Mandela. And it is right that the people of South Africa should hold their government to account. What we are emphasizing here is that we in Zimbabwe want to enjoy the same right. After 43 years of corrupt, gross mismanagement and tyrannical rule by Zanu PF, the people of Zimbabwe are desperate for meaningful change. And for anyone to suggest that they will not permit the people of Zimbabwe to hold free, fair, and credible elections and have regime change is totally unacceptable. And for anyone to suggest that the Zanu PF regime can rig the elections and they will turn around and rubber stamp them and give Zanu PF legitimacy because they will not allow regime change in Zimbabwe is totally unacceptable. And I think this is a message that we would like to hammer in the case of South Africa. We want South Africa right now. I think the saving grace for South Africa is that it is a democratic country. They've managed to run free, fair, and credible elections, which even our friend here, Julius Malema, has never complained that the elections were not free, fair, and credible. That is a saving grace for South Africa. Zimbabwe cannot say the same thing. Zimbabwe has failed to run free, fair, and credible elections since independence in 1980. We are heading for another rigged election in a few months' time. And what we want to send as a clear message to our SADC friends is that they cannot rubber stamp these rigged elections for their own selfish reasons. They and no one has got a right to say they will not allow regime change in Zimbabwe. These elections, it's clear already they are going to be rigged. The only meaningful solution is that they should not be rubber stamped. Zanu PF should not be given legitimacy as a result of these elections. That is the single most important thing. And we want to send that message And we want to send it to our friends in South Africa that we find ANC's position, party resolution last year, to be totally unacceptable. Julius Malema is right to say they have South Africans have got to fight for their rights. And I think Zimbabweans too have got the right to fight their rights, for their rights. And our right to a meaningful election, free, fair, and credible election, and to be the only people who decide who rules Zimbabwe cannot be, is not for negotiations. South Africa may be the most powerful nation in the SADC region, but that does not give them, South Africa or ANC to be specific, the right to say they will override the people's democratic will in Zimbabwe because they don't want regime change in Zimbabwe. It is not for South Africa to decide who rules Zimbabwe and to keep on endorsing rigged elections for the sake of keeping a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime in Zimbabwe in power is totally, totally unacceptable. Thank you and good night.